This is a question which I get asked almost every other day onto the Salesforce Hulk channel, on like in the comments or in the email or on LinkedIn, that all the companies want someone who has got an experience into the like onto the tool or onto the platform. But how can we get an experience without getting a job? So how can we get that experience? So what is your advice for all of those people who are looking for experience without having a job?
Yeah, so to the question of how do you get work experience without the benefit of previous work experience, and how do you really get started, there's different ways to do that. Obviously, veterans have some unique resources which I can go into, but what I'd like to do is really talk about the resources that anybody can access, independent of whether or not they've served. In my case, I began getting work experience through volunteering, and so I went out on LinkedIn, and this is after I had been developing my network for a while, and I created a post, and my post basically said, hey, I am a passionate, aspiring Salesforce professional. I'm interested in volunteering 20 to 25 hours per week for a nonprofit, and looking for anyone that's interested. And because I had built that network and I had been building my personal brand, within 3 days, I had someone that was interested. I had a veteran-focused nonprofit that said, yeah, our admin is getting ready to leave, and we'd love to investigate whether or not it makes sense to bring you aboard. And so I did a few interviews with folks at the organization, and they brought me on as the solo admin, and that's where I got my first experience. And what I tell folks is that always be leveraging your current experience to generate the next experience. And so, you never know where you're going to work a year from now, 3 years from now. Don't limit yourself. And so while I was, I was volunteering for this veteran-focused nonprofit as their sole admin, and learning a ton, which was fantastic. But I was also looking for that next opportunity where I could keep enhancing my skills, because I was still very new to the ecosystem. And so in my case, I was still looking for additional volunteer opportunities because I had free time on the weekends. I found another veteran-focused nonprofit called Merivis, and they agreed to take me on as a consultant, as a pro bono consultant, because they were increasing the size of their programs, and their current org needed to be revamped to be able to handle this additional capacity. And so I began creating functionality for them on their platform. And so at this point, I was working 40 hours for the Navy. I was working about 20 hours for my first veteran-focused nonprofit. And then I was also working, 5 to 10 hours per week for the second veteran-focused nonprofit. And I did that for a year.
And how did you manage
build that
it
experience
along with Navy?
So I would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week. And I would spend about 2.5 to 3 hours doing the volunteer work in the various orgs prior to my kids getting up. And then once they got up, I'd get them ready for school.
Mm-hmm.
I'd go off to work for 8-9 hours, and then I would come home. And then when they were in bed, I'd spend maybe an additional hour of more volunteer work. And then I would repeat that on the weekend. Obviously not all weekend, because they wanted to get out and do things. So, but while they were sleeping, I would do 3, 4, 5 hours of work each day, Saturday and Sunday. And so that amounted to, each week I was working between 65 and 75 hours, which, is not sustainable in the long term. And I don't recommend it, but it did enable me to cram in a whole lot of work experience in the span of a year. But, obviously if you're working with nonprofits, in most cases, you're going to be using the Nonprofit Success Pack, or NPSP, as it's also known. And that's a different animal than the straight Salesforce core platform. All right. They use the objects for different things. There's different functionalities. It's a different use case with, different, different business requirements. And so I knew that I would need to kind of get some mainstream experience. And so then I began looking for internships. And there's a military program where you can apply for an internship during the last 3 to 6 months of your service contract. and they will release you from your service contract, but still pay you while you do this internship. And so obviously that's not available for folks that are not military, but I would still recommend looking for internships. If you're not military and you want to find a way to get experience, and the best way to do that is to leverage your personal brand and use social media to connect with companies and develop relationships with them. Develop relationships with the folks that work there, have informational interviews, talk to folks, and then through those informational interviews and conversations, inquire as to whether there's internship opportunities. And there doesn't need to necessarily be a formalized internship program. And a lot of times you can help them create that just by expressing interest to do some pro bono work for them in exchange for being able to get work experience.
So you were really all in, and you did whatever it took to be where you are today. That's really amazing.
I did, and I didn't stop there. And this is I'd like to share one more way to get work experience.
Yes.
And so some folks are like, well, that's great, Dave, but I can't find a nonprofit that is willing to take me on, or I've contacted companies and there's none that are offering internships. Okay, well, that sometimes that is the case. You can always, I call it alternative work experience. And so what you want to do is you want to demonstrate that you have the skills that are necessary to perform well in the role that you're interested in, whether that's an admin, a developer, a consultant. And there's ways to do that on your own free time. And so what I recommend folks do is to build apps. Get yourself a free developer org.
Make demos.
Which you can just, you can find those you just Google developer org, Salesforce, and then look at your phone and find some of the apps that you're currently using to manage your finances, to manage your workouts, whatever it happens to be, your tasks, and recreate those in Salesforce. So that'll do a couple things for you. One, it will get you acquainted with the data model, process automation, all the facets of Salesforce. It will make you a very good either developer or declarative developer, whichever you're interested in. But if you're able to share that on social media, either through a YouTube channel, through a blog that you write about, by creating an Experience Cloud site and sharing the link, that is what employers are interested in, because they can take a look at that and they can go, okay, I can see this person knows how to build on the platform. I've seen their apps, and it's basically, it's a living resume that you can socialize with employers to demonstrate that you have the skills they're looking for.
How do you want to differentiate this so why I'm asking this question is, let me give you a context of it. I've suggested the same thing to a lot of people, and what they say is, I do not want to brag about it. I'm not that kind of a person who brags about the things that I can do or the certifications that I've got, or whatever. But still they are struggling to get an experience or to get an internship. What is your advice for them?
So military veterans go through the same thing, because in the military, we're taught to place the team before ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so you don't find many military folks that talk about I. It's always, we or the team, us. And that's just our culture. And so when they transition and they come into the private or public sector and they're looking for jobs, they still have that mentality. And unfortunately, it's to their detriment. You have to be able to communicate the value that you as an individual add to the team, but you have to do it in a way that doesn't come off as bragging. And so you have to be able to humbly do that. And so I've always balanced that with gratitude. And so while I will communicate absolutely the value that I bring to a team, the things that I have done, I'm always also quick to thank folks for their assistance that they provided me along the way, and to also bring the team dynamic into that, and provide credit where it's due, because obviously none of us gets where we are solely by ourselves. And so you really have to balance that. That would be the recommendation that I would make.
Got it.